We jump into the Hakdamah Be'ezras Hashem and we take a look at the word Vihine. And today, Be'ezras Hashem, our focus is going to be, and our hope is to finish the Reb Nosson's Hakdamah and to take a look at Shir Na'im. Shir Na'im, Rabbi Nachman's poem, which is sort of like an introduction, along with the second introduction of Rabbi Nachman's himself to the actual Sefer. That's our aim today, B'siyata D'Shmaya. What a privilege. So let's jump in. Vihine. Says Reb Nosson, Vihine zeh Sefer nitfas pam rishon ba'Ashtra b'shnas tafkuv samches. This Sefer was first printed in the Ukrainian city of Ashtra in the year Tafkuv samches b'chaye Rabbeinu Zichrono Livracha, which is Chelik Aleph, right? Like we said, Likutei Kama, Likutei Tinyana was the second volume, which is included within this volume that was published after Rabbi Nachman had left the world. So he says, Zeh shloish esrei shana, 13 years ago. The printers over there, they did a terrible job. It was printed without the presence of Breslev Chasidim. They made terrible mistakes. There were many mistakes shenaflu sham b'shas hatfus that fell in to the printing during the time that the Sefer was being printed. Many places there were like literally whole lines that were missing. They mixed up the order of the different lessons in many places. And they just swapped many different concepts and put them in the wrong place. Aside from all of the other kulkulim, all the other blemishes and problems, the Torah, not putting space between the lessons, and even within the lesson, where it needs a little bit sometimes for there to be a separation between one matter and the next, and they really corrupted the whole job. Sometimes just randomly make a big space of Makam Sharm al and other places where they needed to make a space. They just smushed everything together. Sometimes you don't even know where a Torah starts because there was no space that was given to let you know that that's the beginning of something new. There you go. So he says, Reb Nosson, I focused on all of this to fix everything and to make sure that everything is done appropriately and properly. Hashem was with me. I fixed all these problems that had fallen in to the first print. It's also important to know that first Sefer had been printed while I was not there. As Rabbi Nachman was journeying in Kilas Lemberg, because Rabbi Nachman journeyed all the time. He was constantly traveling around on mysterious missions, mysterious journeys. And there was again many opportunities to fix and to correct the Lashon b'Madur Tinyana in a second volume. So he's saying the second time it was printed, it was really done the same way. Meaning, again, I wasn't there, and they needed to fix all these things up, they just printed it. Came, therefore, says Reb Nosson, at the volume that he was writing this Hakdamah for, Re'isi v'Nasan al-Libi, so I focused my concentration, L'sakin b'har b'mekomis l'harcha u'dvar yoser, to fix and to expand. And says Reb Nosson, I added in order to aid in the understanding of the Torah, all in accordance with what I heard from Rabbi Nachman himself, like we said, all of the lessons that were written by Rabbi Nachman himself, meaning that they were taken literally out of his notebook, right? So it's not Reb Nosson transcribing it and writing it over. It was Rabbi Nachman's words. Says Reb Nosson, Legarati, I didn't take away. Vaisafti, I didn't add. Afilu ois echas, not even one letter. Only like if I mamish needed to add something. Look, the eza perish, a bear, just something that was really absolutely necessary. Hitzakti asai, right? So I signed it muskar and I put it misaych shnei chatzai levana, right? In two what they call parentheses, brackets, half brackets. They call it something else here. Laman dasha ein zem l'shen is al so that everyone should know that this, what I added, was not Rabbi Nachman's himself. Casually drops this in. This was way before Sefaria and anything else. Nosson says, I also toiled and I found all the Mara Makaimas of all the hundreds and thousands. It'd be interesting to know how many sources Rabbi Nachman's quotes. Every other line is another source. He's weaving it together. Thousands and thousands of sources. Mikol Psukei Tanakh, from all the Psukim in Tanakh, Umamar Rabbeinu Zochar Livracha B'Shas, and the whole Shas of all the different teachings, Midrashim, and all the Midrashim B'Sifrei Hazar, Kadosh V'Tikunim V'Kitzvei Arizal. Okay, that was Reb Nosson for you. He was able to go and find the source for every single, or he knew the source, for every single source that Rabbi Nachman quoted in the entire Tanakh, the entire Shas, all Midrashim, Kitzvei Ari, and the Zar Kadosh. Asher Rabba Kamei Rabba B'Sefer Eilecha. Right, Asher Rabba, that there are so many. Kamei Rabba B'Sefer Hazeh, U'Bekulam Tziyanti V'Ezras Hashem Yisbarach Hamar Ha'Mekoyim Shalahem Ayim Mekoyim Kavoday. And I added their source and the Maramakim. Gam Samti Simanim LaTorah. Says Reb Nosson, something else that I added in this edition, which became the prototype for all subsequent editions, the model. I added Simanim. Shehitzakti, it's a called Torah v'Torah that I put next to each and every lesson. Siyun, a sign, Misimin al pi seder aleph beis. I called the Torahs by the aleph beis. Laman yekal al mayan limtzim b'vukashay. So somebody who wants to look at the sefer can easily remember which teaching it is without having to refer to the content or without even having to refer to the heading. You just know it much more easily. This is Torah aleph, this is Torah beis, Torah gimel. They're called Torahs and they're followed by a letter. V'gam b'soichal Torah ba'atzma. And this was incredibly useful. Within each lesson, Reb Nosson split it up. It's sakti oisies l'simin to call inyan v'inyan. Each lesson, especially the longer lessons, or I would say particularly the longer lessons, are split up in and of the lesson themselves. So you have Torah aleph, simin aleph, beis, gimel, and that way you can reference to a particular part of the lesson. Some of the lessons go on for pages and pages, and you're able to find exactly what you need, and you follow the same thing in Likutei, splitting it up into different simanim, into different oisies. To enable you to sort of understand where one concept finishes, and now Rabbi Nachman is moving to the next room, right, or to the next stage of that particular structure. And to make known, now that the teaching is moving onward, like the one who is looking at the sefer will understand. Gam, says Rabbi Nosson, also as he comes to the end of his glorious Hakdamah, sometimes you'll find the same concept in the sefer that's brought twice. Pam ba'arucha, one time in a much longer form, pam b'ksara, and sometimes in a shorter form. And the reason for this is, v'zeh, ki chein darka b'kodesh v'avinus chana d'bracha, this was Rabbi Nachman's way. Shahat-Torah shekatsav ha'atzmai, that the teachings that he wrote down for himself, haya al pi roiv shinuyim rabba min ha'amir v'achsiva. There was many differences between what he wrote and then how he gave over that Torah, right? It was like a person preparing notes for himself, a teacher who prepares just a little shorthand notes, and then when he's giving it over, obviously the whole game changes, right? And he's able to elaborate, he's able to explain it much more deeply. When he wrote it, he just wrote it, in alignment with his rihitas moyach, with the flow of his brain, right? Which was on his madrega, and he was able to write it in such a way that he would know what he was saying, but nobody else. Right, and by the way, I'll just say, fascinatingly enough, there are some Torahs in the Likutei Moharan, I think there are 2 or 3, where Reb Nosson literally prints just the shorthand notes of Rabbi Nachman, and it's 2 words followed by a full stop, a period, 2 words by a period, 2 words from Kol HaTorah Kula, and then Reb Nosson tries to sort of deconstruct it, but it's fascinating to see how mamash the tamsis, just like how Rabbi Nachman saw concepts and the linkages without explaining them. It's a pella. We'll get there, but as Hashem will just read it through and be astounded. But that was Rabbi Nachman's shorthand notes. Right? Therefore, it was a lot less than what Rabbi Nachman actually gave over during the drush. Says Rabbi Nosson, but I didn't just leave them that way. I didn't just take the shorthand notes. I wrote down what I heard at the Shas Hadrush B'li Giroyin without anything missing, the Tosefos without anything added. And many of these drushes were given over on Shabbos. Rabbi Nachman had 3 times a year where he was giving over his primary drushes, and those were Shabbos Chanukah and Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah. These were 3 times that even today Breslauer Hasidim travel to Uman to be there. Shabbos Chanukah, Shavuos, and Rosh Hashanah. Those were the 3 major times a year that Rabbi Nachman revealed major lessons. Some of them took him 8-9 hours to give, and that was on Yantiv. And Rabbi Nosson, like the Chayzer, would sit there and he would absorb every single detail right after Yantiv Shabbos. He would go and he would write the whole thing down, and here's the crucial bit, he would bring it to Rabbi Nachman for review. That's very important, right? Because it's an early Chassidus sefer. A lot of the Svarim, like I said in a previous year, you don't really know, whether the Talmidim really grasped what the Rebbe was giving over. So it's always a bit suspect. Kedusha Sleba was written by Rabbi Nachman himself. The Ishbitzer wasn't. Mea Sheloch was printed 2 generations after the Mea Sheloch by his grandchildren, right? From what they heard from Hasidim who heard from Hasidim. So it still is the best that we have, but it's not mamish the tzaddik. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. Marianaim is from the Chernobler, but there are other svarim that aren't. So it's important to know. Rabbi Nachman looked over every word in the Sefer. And even though you'll find many mamarim that I myself wrote, but then I would receive afterwards somebody who would find the actual paper that Rabbi Nachman wrote, his understanding of what he gave over before he gave it over, right? Meaning the shorthand. And there were differences between them. I said, okay, I'm going to include both. And so sometimes you'll see the mimer in its fleshed out form, and then at the end, he'll bring in just a little bit. A good example of this is Torah Kuf Yud Beis. Rabbi Nachman gives the Torah of Sohar Tasal Teva, very famous teaching from Rabbi Nachman. And after Rabbi Nosson gives the whole thing, he says, Oid Matzasi, in his handwriting, this whole Torah just brought in 10 lines. And that's the Tamsis of it. Rabbi Nosson fleshed it out the way that Rabbi Nachman had given it live, so to speak. Right, so he said, Shneim Ke'echad Tovim, I included them both. And the general rule is that whatever I brought twice, there's always going to be a chiddush. There's always going to be something that's unique, that's new, and that's why we have this phenomenon in Likutei Moharan of sometimes you have the teachings that are brought twice. Ashreinu. Okay. Ad kaid varenu eila. He says, we've arrived at the end of the Hakdamah. It is to this point that our words have been Eila Mu'atim, these small words, Hamachzikim Harbe, but incredibly strengthening words, empowering words, encouraging words. Just to reveal just a tiny bit of attempting to understand the ways of this Sefer. The Yeser Mizei Efshel Laharach L'Saper B'Mehus Kedushas Neflois Nerois Sefer HaKadosh V'Ner Hazeh. It is impossible to add or to expand any more than we already did about the greatness and the holiness and the wondrous elevation of this awesome Sefer. Because all the pages of the world, all the papers in the universe would not suffice to write down and to record and to transmit the greatness of even one lesson in the Sefer, and certainly not the whole thing of Befrat. And again, he makes reference specifically because of the terrible machlekes and the terrible discord and the machlokes v'niskayim ba'avoneseinu harabim, because in our times has been fulfilled in our great sins. The pasuk v'tashlich emes arza, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has thrown the truth, or the truth has been thrown arza to the ground. V'emes ne'ederes, like it says in the Gemara in the end of Saita, the truth is made Adarim Adarim, or ne'ederes is wandering. Shenasa emes Adarim Adarim. It's been split into different groups. V'chol echad v'echad omer she'etzleya emes, and each group is saying the truth is by us. So what are we going to do? How are we going to know? Every tzaddik is claiming to be the true tzaddik. Everybody's claiming to be the sole doctor for all of Am Yisrael. Every Chasidus thinks that their Rebbe is is a Reb Shimon Bar Yochai Rebbe for everybody. So what do you say? So how are you going to know? Says Reb Nosson, this is maybe like the most crucial sentence. Avalafal pikein ha'emesu echad. So you can have millions of monkeys claiming to be people, but there's still a difference, and there's just one truth. There's just one truth. Says Rav Nosson, the truth is usually a testimony and a witness for itself. And each person has bechira. So what we can do is approach things with an open heart and an open mind, and then you'll get to choose. And that's it. If everybody again can mute, Rav Mikey, if you don't mind unmuting. Thank you so much. We cast our burden on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have no one else to rely on. And here he goes into poetic Rav Nosson mode as he comes to the end of the Hakdamah, begins to rhyme. And Rav Nosson was like a wondrous scribe. It's such a talent of writing, as you can see in this Hakdamah, flowing and beautiful. See, he says our eyes are tali on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We look toward Hashem. His mercy has guided us and carried us until now and helped us until now. Even for all eternity, let him not forsake us. Let him not leave us alone. Send your light and your truth and they will guide us. May Hashem be with us like He was with our forefathers. May the pleasantness of our Kodesh Baruch Hu be upon us, and our hands, that we can institute, we can build a vessel for His glory. Ben David Yavav Yigalenu, and let Mashiach come and let Him redeem us. And let Him bring us up to our land in joy. And let the Beis Hamikdash be rebuilt. Amin Kein Yiratzon. And he ends, these are the words of Nosson ben Reb Naftali Hertz, son-in-law of the Goyin HaChassid HaMeforsim David Tzvi Orbach. Reb Nosson's last name was Hertz or Sternhartz, who was the Av Beis Din in Sharigrad. These are gigantic cities in Kremenetz and Molov. Reb Nosson was his son-in-law. And with this, he concludes his Hakdamah. Ashreinu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarim. Now, if the Chaver doesn't mind passing the sheets, there are sheets here, so you can distribute them unless you already have them in your sheets. But there's one two-sided sheet. Let's pass them around. Now, Be'ezus Hashem, we're going to be taking a look at what's called Shir Na'im. Shir Na'im is the only existing poem that we have from Rabbi Nachman himself. Shir Na'im is Rabbi Nachman's words. And there's an estimation that Rabbi Nachman wrote this in the last 3 years of his life, during his time of terrible, terrible illness. And Rabbi Nosson saw it fit to put Shir Na'im in the beginning of Likutei Moharan, mamish, as what we call the sort of the first introductory piece outside of Rabbi Nosson's Hakdamah, because there's something else called the Hashmata, which is a tiny little teaching that comes before Torah Aleph. It's like a Torah, but it's before the numbers start. And we're going to get there as well, Be'ezus Hashem. But first, let's take a look at Shir Na'im. There's a lovely, beautiful, beautiful book that's called Shir Na'im, Song of Delight. It was written by a very, very dear and sweet Yid, who's a friend of my father's, has become much older than me, but a friend of mine over the years as well, Rav David Sears. And over here in this book, he goes through every single line, as you can see over here, and he explains it in a very, very incredible, beautiful way. So I highly recommend it. It's put out by Orot, which is Rabbi Tzal Naor's publishing house, and it's called Shir Na'im. And so he brings a lot about the history of it and what it is and what it isn't. And in Shir Na'im, in this book, Song of Delight, he writes the most beautiful thing. He says that in Sichas Haran, Rabbi Nachman spoke in such glorious, wonderful, exalted terms about Hakdamos Milin. Rabbi Nachman said, if Jews would know, they don't know what good they have. They don't know how sweet their tradition is, because we all grew up with Hakdamas, and all we hear is Sa and Ta and Sa and Ta at the end, and we don't know anything that what it means. And Rabbi Nachman said that the song Hakdamas, he couldn't get over it. He was a huge, huge fan of Hakdamas. When is Hakdamas read? Shavuos morning, right before laning, right before Kabbalah Satara Mamish. Hakdamas is a Hakdamah. It's an introduction. And so he writes over here that in as much as Likutei Moharan is transmitting, as Rabbi Nachman said again and again, a new Gilui of Torah da'atika stima, a little taste of Mashiach's Torah, like a next level Torah revelation that didn't exist before Rabbi Nachman came to the world. He says Shir Na'im is Rabbi Nachman's Hakdamas Milin before Kabbalah Satira, right? So before we're about to go into receiving a new download, a new Gilui of Torah, Shir Na'im is like Hakdamas, a very, very beautiful thing. In the back of the Sefer, he brings from Rabbi Tzal Naor, who is the world expert in a certain sense on the writings of Rav Kook, who has published so many of the writings of Rav Kook over the years with his publishing house Orot. So he brings in the back, as he published the Sefer, so he writes, fascinatingly, that if you take Shir Na'im and you hold it up against Hilchas Yisod HaTorah of the Rambam, you basically see, because thematically the structure of the themes are aligning, you see a Kabbalistic answer to the Rambam's presentation of Deus. It's mamish like a full theology written in acrostic, in poetry form. And the reason that he thought that way, outside of the fact that the themes match, is because Rabbi Nachman makes use to refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu right in the beginning. In the fourth stanza, which we'll see it together now, the word Nimtza HaMechuyev. Nimtza HaMechuyev, right, means the necessary existent, which is a philosophical reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, comes straight from our Nevuchim, which Rabbi Nachman battled against. right? Rabbi Nachman, like many of the early tzaddikim, the Vilna Gaon in that camp, and the Baal Shem and all the tzaddikim were not so happy with the Rambam's sort of philosophical presentation, dry in a certain sense as it was from the Gilui of the Ari and from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right? Well, not the Ari came much later, but the Zohar Kodesh. All right, and because the Rambam, and this is a big topic, didn't have access, at least on the surface, to the teachings of the Zohar, wasn't printed yet. So his presentation was missing that gilui, that hashpa of the more mystical, Kabbalistic revelation. And so here, it's almost as if Rabbi Nachman is like hinting, I'm answering the Rambam because I'm using his terminology for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which he builds a whole lesson on. Be'ezus Hashem, as you're going to see in Torah and Beis, the whole teaching is based on this concept of Hashem being the Mechuyev HaMetzias, right, which is the necessary existent that isn't talui, doesn't depend on anything else, but is existence in and of himself, as we're going to see in Torah and Beis, Be'ezus Hashem, and how we can channel that into our lives to respond to this. We're going to get there. But over here, because that's a tacit link, if you go into Ilchos Yesodei Torah, you can match up paragraph to paragraph, concept to concept, and see Rabbi Nachman sort of pushing back, clarifying, cleansing, and presenting a new theology that's based and more aligned with the teachings of Rashbi and the Ari HaKadosh.
Who is it that does that? And that
Rabbi Tzal Naor, and it comes. It's the very last section. It's an appendix in Shir Naim, Song of Delight. Okay, fascinating. If you want to borrow this afterwards, you can take a look at it. Okay, ve'elu divrei Rabbeinu Zechron Levracha. Now we begin with the words of Rabbi Nachman himself. Zchus yagon aleinu l'shem yichud kudsha b'ruch v'shnente. Shir Naim, a pleasant poem, a pleasant song. Here Rabbi Nosson introduces Shir Naim, and he says, "Koilol inyanim rabim b'dvar mu'atim." In this poem, Rabbi Nachman included many different themes. Within Dvar Mu'atim, very limited words. Mu'at, it's like something small that's machzik hamaruba. This is a big theme that comes out throughout Rabbi Nachman's writings, and particularly his stories. Something small that contains a lot. He speaks in wondrous ways about the praise of our holy Torah, and in the praise of Moshe Rabbeinu and the role of the tzaddik. Awesome musar and guidance and encouragement to enable each person's soul to awaken. And he speaks in this poem, as we're going to see in a minute, from the greatness of Hashem and the wonders of His creation of nature. And he was victorious, and he succeeded to speak about the greatness of Olam Haba to a person who tastes that in the next world, but more importantly in this world. And it describes the song that will be sung la'asid when Mashiach comes. And at the same time, he outlines Meriras Hamachov, the bitterness of the pain, and the frustration of those who are distant from them, that lose an Aveda that doesn't come back, namely time. Rabbi Nachman speaks a number of times in this poem about how time is going by so quickly. Gotta grab the time, right? Imagine if, and it's not to look back and be sad about it, because everything only happens in each and every one of our lives exactly when it needs to. But whoever's benefiting, from just waking up early, I'm not talking about Likutei, but just making a seder before davening, like we could have been doing this, some of us, for 20, 30 years, and so unbelievable. So Baruch Hashem, in Le'ach Shavemus, we're doing it now, but time, you start to appreciate time a little bit. Wow, every minute counts. I can do something, I can accomplish with my life. Unbelievable. It helps people wake up early. It wakes people up. It inspires and awakens the slumbering. Strengthens the tired. And this is the most important thing of Rabbi Nachman. It lets the person know just how powerful you are, not just a human being wandering around the earth. You're a gibar. The whole world depends on you and on us. That it is in our power to access and to succeed in all of this. Rabbi Nachman lifted his voice like a shofar to turn our hearts for all humans to join together and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu as one unit, as one group. These are the little small ways just to understand this song. And the name of Rabbi Nachman, Sheim Aviv, and the name of his father, which is Simcha Chasam B'Rashi Acharuzah. So if you just look down on the sheet, you can see Nachman, right? And he sort of wove his name into it. Kafel U'Mashulish Umuruba. First Kafel, which is just Nachman, right? And then As you look on the others, it's nun nun ches mem mem nun 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 ches ches mem mem, right? Which is kafel. And then if you look at the end, it says the last three is ben simcha, right? Ben simcha. Even before that as well, right? Nachman ben simcha. Nachman, the son of Simcha, which also means, of course, Nachman ben Simcha, who is connected very much to joy, right? Nachman ben Simcha. Okay. Ad kan Rav Nosson. Here Rabbi Nachman takes over. And the tzaddik says, Nimuse hadasais kulam la yishvu l'dosenu. The ways of all of the religions, kulam la yishvu, all together, they don't add up l'dosenu, to our religion. The universal religion for every human being. That wasn't just an ethnic God for Am Yisrael, but it's the God of the world. It's the God who created everything. It's all of existence. Chachmeim badu milibam, right? They're wise men. Badu milibam. They came up with things in their own hearts. Nimusim, different minhagim, different chagim, yamim tovim, lahavdal b'sichlam anoshi, with their human brain. But Moshe, our chacham, he begins with Moshe Rabbeinu, because everything comes down through Moshe, which is the tzaddik, which we're going to see again and again in Rabbi Nachman's writings, particularly in Torah Beis. Moshe alal amorim. Moshe Rabbeinu went up on high, va'anan levushay, and he enclothed himself in a cloud. And Nimtza HaMechuya, which is this philosophical reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, uncharacteristic of a Kabbalistic sefer, Dibar imay b'chol pam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe, Uperish min ha'isha, and he separated from ha'isha. Nivzim udvuyim eschufim anachnu. We are embarrassed, udvuyim, we are in pain, eschufim anachnu, we're pushed down. Chachmasa me'ayin timatzeh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chachma, me'ayin timatzeh, it emerges from ayin, it emerges from no place, from the highest spiritual realm. Mimenu lakach toiv lakachnu, and from there Moshe Rabbeinu lekach toiv, he took a lekach toiv from that place lakachnu, and he picked this fruit off of that tree, and he brought it down to us. Melech b'Yeshurun, a reference to Moshe imdasenu, along with our Torah kashnei acham lo yispardu. You don't have Moshe without the Torah. You don't have Torah without Moshe. We don't have Torah without Moshe Rabbeinu. People don't understand this. Torah is the most important thing. Well, you don't have Torah without tzaddikim. Tzaddikim are the most important thing, right? Halacha says at least 3 people are meant to be standing b'shas kriyas haTorah, right? Incredible thing. One of them is a symbol, a semel for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the giver of the Torah. The other is the receiver of the Torah, and the third one is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe is called in halacha in the Sefer Rishonim as the sarsur, the go-between, right? Moshe Rabbeinu. Melech b'Yeshurun imdasenu kishnei acham lo yispardu. Nishmasa v'gufei hazach zu mizu lo'nadu, and his soul from his body zu mizu lo'nadu. They never separated. Nafshoisam rabim, their souls, the souls of human beings, are many. Kein rabbi de'aseyam, and there are many, many, many different ways of thinking. V'chilus faraseyam, and many different narratives and approaches and ways of looking at the world. Chadashim ikarim ba'u avodasehem, but they made up new things. Chadashim ikarim, and their avodah is new. And says Rabbi Nachman, let's be clear, machshaveisehem loy machshaveisenu. Right, our way is not their way is not our way. V'lo darchenu darchehem, and our way is not their way. We are the Am Segula. We are a nation that's meant to be a kingdom of priests, and we have a priesthood role in humanity. We're different than them. Right, and our job is to aid them and to guide them and to teach them and bring the whole world back. But there's a fundamental distinction between us that enables us to do our job as the Mamlechas Kohanim. Nafsheseinu achasi. He says our soul achasi is burnt on the concept of oneness, of unity. That's what it means to be a Jew. Ve'enanai to the Ribet Salmeim, we will never turn to duality, we will never turn to polytheism. Our whole thing is to bring the light of unity to the world, like Avram the Ivri, who stood on one side and the whole world on the other, smashing idols. This is what we're meant to do in the world as descendants of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And here he turns to some of the most famous words, maybe in the whole Likutei, certainly of Shir. He turns to the individual Jewish soul, now that he's clarified just what we have, just what Moshe Rabbeinu brought down to us, just who we are, just what our mission is. He turns to his soul. And he says, Nafshi achazaka v'apikachas, my strong and wise soul. Lama lechas alayich. Why haven't you had mercy on yourself? V'shachacht oymin ha'megadol esach, and you forgot the craftsman who created you, who grew you. Hashem, And who gave you sweet things to eat, and who clothed you in royal purple. And but look at you now. You're trampled by the feet of the sheep, by the flocks. And you're trampled by the lowly taivas that are thick, that are gashmi, that are coarse, that are corporeal. And you're like naked. And he's speaking to all of Am Yisrael. What happened to this people? What happened to us? How did we fall from that mission that HaKadosh Baruch Hu entrusted us to bring the whole world back to Him? And look at us. Yein mishtayech, the wine of our drink, nepach, has been transformed lemishtei demise into a drink of tears. Chazak v'nischazek, says Rabbi Nachman. He begins his sefer with encouragement. Be strong and be strengthened. V'al tiyeh kapil hagadol. Don't be like the powerful elephant. V'chagamal, and like the powerful camel. That a little mouse is running around and the huge elephant is trying to step around him and he's so scared because a little mouse. What are you allowing a mouse to make you crazy? This is the elephant is not thinking. Says the Rebbe, you know our issue with the Yetzer Hara, with this little mouse, is because we don't really know how powerful we are. We're an elephant. It's a little tiny mouse. Squish him! Squash him! Why are we allowing ourselves to be trampled? Squish him. Oh, but my wise and my strong soul. What are you going to do to that day? When you go back up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You were sent on a mission. Are we accomplishing our mission? Are we doing what we were sent to this world to do? We're Jewish neshamas. We have a mission in the world. Al tabet al metzalis hazman. Don't look at the fleeting pleasures of time. Ki gufcha chalish v'dal. Your body is weak. Your body is slight. Hazman holech. Time is passing. V'hoime. Rushing by. V'aguf, and the body. Efshar achshav b'yoyimai. Maybe today's the day. Mikoyev leva eben. So he speaks to his neshama. He says, please penetrate leva eben. Penetrate my heart of stone. V'ha'er li misham ma'at panecha. Reveal yourself. Just let me see just a glimmer of your presence. Barak hachama, you who are clear like the sun. Yafa kalavana, beautiful like the moon. Al tachrish, don't be silent. Soul, don't be silent. Neshama vibisti, right? Where are you, my soul? Wake up. Val tishkoit, and don't rest. Harima kolcha ha'arev, lift your powerful, sweet voice, b'shirois, with song, v'hoida, and thanks. Obsach picha, open your mouth, v'toitzi v'arecha ne'imim, lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, release your beautiful words before Hashem, which is a reference, of course, to Spodidus. So he's laying out a theology, right? If we can anchor ourselves in realizing how powerful what it means to be a Jew, and to recognize we have Moshe Rabbeinu who brought down the Torah for us, we have tzaddikim who are guiding us, and then we reflect on our own lives and see, where am I? Where am I? Where in the world am I? What is my response? Says Rabbi Nachman, Hispodidus. Go and speak this all out before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's your neshama revealing itself. Lift your eyes on high, and remember your ancient love. Naharis nechalim. Now Rabbi Nachman turns to nature so powerfully. He turns to nature immediately. Naharis, streams, nechalim, rivers, afike mayim rabim, many springs, v'yamim gedolim uktanim, and large and small bodies of water. Niflaim u'mishurim v'tzeveihem u'mitamem u'v'teveihem. Each and every one of these streams is different than the other in its color, in its taste, in its nature. Chayas getanis u'gedolos, powerful, wild animals, small and large, b'chol echad v'echad ein mispalim mineihem, that are positioned around all the different rivers and all the different topographies. Ein mispalim mineihem, there are innumerable species, and they all meshabchim or mahalalim kulam Hashem Yisbarach v'chol evreim. Can't we hear that all of nature is singing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Rabbi Nachman, there was maybe no tzaddik that adored nature like the Rebbe, that spoke more about nature, going out into nature. The whole world is singing the song of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's up to us to recognize that and thereby to activate it, to bring it out into reality. Nilin Yagidu Tamid, they're constantly speaking. And the angels don't silence them. And they all have beautiful, shining diamonds and precious gems, very deep down. And there are lights, there are spiritual lights hidden in those vessels. Neshamas hagzur mitachas kisei kavod. Then he refers to humans, or to Am Yisrael more specifically, that are etched out from under the kisei hakavod, the throne of glory. Nichsefat hamid al shar shalias lavud, and they're constantly yearning to be connected to the Creator. Every human being is constantly yearning on an inside level, and it leads us to taivas, and it leads us to addiction, and it leads us looking in every place that leaves us emptier than ever, and we're actually yearning for Kudsha Baruch Hu Shchinte. We're longing to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chaim v'chesed she'eves michazdei David, and Am Yisrael are drawing down life and kindness from what's called Chazdei David, which is Malchus de Kedusha, which we'll get into in Torah Aleph. Chein ruach mitipe gan edem mimenu lo avad, and Chein ruach, this graceful spirit from the drops of Gan Eden, Mimenu lo avad, are never lost. Moishvois ha'hichalois v'ahali ha'shalom l'chol achas v'achas nimsman v'nisvat havhoid. All the different Moishvois ha'hichalois, all the different chambers v'ahali shalom and the tents of peace are marked for each and every person who's looking to get close to Hashem with signs of splendor. Ma pa'al kel ha'malachim yishalu. The angels ask, what did God say? And they're constantly moving on their missions like shooting stars. These are entities, says Rabbi Nachman, that are completely removed from all physicality, from all pleasures, misha archosam of it, right, and removed from the human being who has corrupted his ways. Then a person can get stuck in this world. They can be stuck. They can really be stuck in evil and in cherpa and in shame, in kafakela, the slingshot of hell. Nishuva Hashem, says Rabbi Nachman, return to Hashem. V'loinia eva, don't be lost. Nekabel rava taiva ava. Accept everything that happens in your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, with love, menalbish love ad, and bedek, bejewel our eternal Father. Brias Hakdamah v'chadureha. Now he turns to the creation of the world, right? The creation of the earth, v'chadureha. Okay, sorry for the flat earthers. Rabbi Nachman says, Paskins, the world is round, right? V'chadureha, and the round earth, aratzus medinas rabbis viveha, with so many different lands and so many different countries. Bnei adam mishlo shana v'daseha, human beings, each one with his own language and his own way. Nitzanim ufrachim v'ibeha. And Am Yisrael from Eretz Yisrael are bringing new buds, blossoms, and fresh grass. Nefilas hamedinas miruchaiseha. And from that light, kimitzian tetisera, everything else will crumble. But in a holy way, everybody will come back. Everyone will come back to join one unit to serve Hashem. Nesheres haimedes, Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael will remain. V'hagalgalam akifim sviva, with all of the cosmos circling it. Shayatas hashedim beruchas ba'avir. Let's do this quickly. Shayatas hashedim, the shindalids, the demons, Ruchas ba'avir, are constantly filling the earth. Sheim gzeres Hashem yisbarach Hashem, they're constantly listening for decrees v'sholtem ba'arba avay shem ashar v'abar v'amava v'hever, and they are presiding over the four damagers. Mishutafim im hamalachim imnei adam b'gemul, and they're like in between angels and humans. Mibris kodesh barchim, you know how to get them away? With a holy bris. Again, Rabbi Nachman's bringing all the themes he's going to speak about in the Likutei Moharan into one poem. It's remarkable, right? The bris kodesh, shmiras habris, guarding ourselves over our taiva, hanemer boy himal yimal, right? It's said about the bris in the Torah Hakdamah, that gets them away. They run away from that. Chayvtim kivimaklis, they're chastised with sticks, b'tzuraisam hameshunais, with their misfigured forms, chaybrech havarim v'chashvim, and all the charmers and sorcerers, machriyim oisam hashbasam b'shemes hachovanais, are controlling them with different corrupted names. But the Torah will protect us. Hatstaka matzelis mimisis megunas tzedaka, or protect a person from a terrible, horrible death. Now he closes, Nivua ein lanu, we don't have prophecy. Harika sheinu umais al uma yechida, the chomping of the teeth of all the nations against Am Yisrael, tvuna ein banu, we don't have any advice. Where should we turn? Hostage deal, no hostage deal. There's no good answer. We don't know what to do. And they're constantly in conversation. How do we administer this cup of pain? Nispal olam ad yavai ani, and we're gonna have to carry their yoke ad yavai ani until the pauper comes, until Mashiach comes. Who is Ben Yechapes Beginzei Aviv? He's a son that searches in the treasure houses of his father. Neizar Teres Na'ater Beben Chaviv, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will put a noble crown on his head. Shir Chadash as Nashir, and then a new song will be sung. Rabbi Nachman said that I will sing a song la'asid lavai. Rabbi Nachman said I will sing a song la'asid lavai, and it will be the Olam Haba of thousands and thousands of Jews. Rabbi Nachman said that if I would reveal one line in Likutei Moharan together with its song and its dance, the whole world would be completely nullified. because every Torah has a song and a dance. Rabbi Nachman just revealed the lyrics. There's a melody, there's a dance. This is what he says in Chaim Moharan. There will be a new song that will be sung. Malkeinu, our king, kol echad be'echad, mara be'etzba basar, will point with fleshy fingers. Chasam Torah b'leiv kol echad shakach. The Torah will be sealed within our hearts, not to forget. Hamavas lanetzach hivula, death will be completely removed. K'tairas reach, it will flutter away like k'tairas, like a fleeting scent. And we will then be able to reveal a wisdom that enables us to understand, as Rabbi Nachman does in the whole Likutei, the different parts of our body. And each limb and each body part. There's a whole book in Breslov Research Institute called Anatomy of the Soul, where it goes through every part of the body, and it brings from Likutei and all Kesvei Breslov the spiritual insight into the body parts. Every part of the body is addressed by the Rebbe in the Sefer. Chiyuv Havanasai, and the importance of understanding this, Ma'ila will help Liadias Habayre to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu HaMetzayer Elai Yitziras Kulam, who designed each and every detail of this. Merape Kol Chayli, and that will heal all ills. The Ishma Chayvos, and all of our pain. Iver Upiseach, it will heal the eyes of the blind. Saru Avanagua, the person who's stricken and crippled. Doyeg V'koyeg, the person who's worried, the person who's suffering. Says Rabbi Nachman, he finishes, and then, when Mashiach comes, but even before Mashiach comes, in order to bring the light of Mashiach into our lives, we will eat l'kiyam nafsheseinu. It's fascinating how he ends this whole thing. The culmination is eating. To be careful how we're eating. To eat just to keep our body going, and to lessen our taivas. Ad kan Shir Na'im, what an incredible poem. Be'ezus Hashem, tomorrow there's going to be more of a broad introduction, and then we'll do the Hashmata, and then next week, Monday, we will carry on with Torah Aleph, B'siyata D'Shmaya. Thank you, Yana. Thank you so much for joining us.
Melech Chai V'Kayam Al Kol Neshima She'ani